Hi everyone. I thought I would share a few of my favorite photo correction techniques. Um, just those problem photos that you just wish were a little better. Well, here are a few techniques that will help you kind of save a shot that you thought was just a goner. Let's start with something that's too dark. It's so common to meter on the wrong thing and not get your subject exposed the right way. So let's start there. So here's an image, two figures in a tunnel, a little dark. Let's go to the image menu, then to adjustments, and choose shadows highlights. This is great. It almost instantly detects the problem area and brightens it up. There's a setting for the shadows, highlights, and some color adjustments. So you can basically kind of dial up what percentage, like how much you want to reduce the shadows or brighten them up, or kind of save that information that was lost. There's a tone setting, right? Like you can, bring those tonal values up a bit as well. And this radius is like a tolerance setting. The lower the radius, the fewer pixels will be affected. The higher the radius, the more it will include and modify. You got to be careful. If the radius setting gets too high, it starts to look a little strange. So only use as much as you absolutely need. All right, so highlights, same thing there. If you've got highlights that are a little out of control, you can tone them down with this setting. Again, it's got a tonal range and a radius as well. And then usually when you're kind of salvaging something out of the shadows, there's not much light there, and therefore there's not a lot of color. So this color adjustment, you'll see kind of resurrects a little bit of that color that's lost in those shadow areas. And again, there's a mid-tone setting for that as well. Okay, so this is already better, quite a bit. Now, one of the other problems here is that anything that's kind of in the shadow areas is going to be a little bit grainy. So when you brighten up a shadow, there's going to be a lot of noise in there. So here's something that's pretty handy. Go to the filter menu, choose noise, reduce noise. And once again, shadow area, pretty noisy. So this allows you to smooth some of that noise out. Now, the trade-off is when it does it, you're going to lose some details. Now, you can try this preserve details setting, but the higher that goes, the more noise is going to come back into the image. So if you can leave the preserve details as low as is acceptable, then you're going to get rid of more noise. The trouble is, again, you're going to lose detail in the process. So it's a trade-off. All right, so same thing with sharpen details. If you bump that sharpen details percentage way up, you're going to reintroduce a lot of that noise that you were removing in the first place. And this remove JPEG artifact's really nice. If you've got a JPEG you're trying to fix and you see that kind of blocky way that JPEGs are compressed, it can help smooth those out as well. So, it's not a huge difference, and I'm not sure if you can see that or that clearly or not on my screen, but it's definitely cleaned up a lot of that extra noisy, distracting textures. Okay, so before, after. one more thing that we can add is a curves adjustment. If you, in fact, if you click on this guy right here, the finger with the arrow up and down next to it, that button in the curves adjustment properties panel, what that allows you to do is like select an area that you want to brighten, and if you click on it and hold your mouse button down and drag up, it will brighten that area, or likewise if you drag down, it will darken that area. I'm wanting to brighten their faces up a little bit more, so if you'll notice over here, right, in my curve, it picked out that spot and pulled it up to brighten those values in just that spot. Now, typically what's called for is an S curve. So I'm going to take the darks and pull them down just a little bit. See, it creates a bit of an S shape. Well, not much of an S shape, but the highlights are getting brighter and the darks are getting a little darker. So you can see how it punches up contrast and sharpness when I do that, right? Okay, that's getting better. All right, so highlights, shadows, reduce noise filter, very handy, and a good old-fashioned S-curve. All right, so let's move on to Content Aware. Content Aware came out a few years back, and it really revolutionized things. It made things so much easier. So let's take a look at it, shall we? All right, what it does is allows you to kind of select problem areas and fill them with areas of the photograph that closely match what that background should be, right? Essentially replacing them, removing them from the image. It's pretty great. So here I've got a shot taken at Cadillac Ranch near Amarillo, Texas. And we're obviously tourists, but there are a bunch of other tourists that I don't want in this photograph, so I'm going to remove them. So back here, right, I'm sure they're wonderful people, but I don't want them in my photograph, so they've got to go. All right, so instead of taking time to select these, I've already selected them and saved them as an alpha channel, right? So over here in my channels, there they are. I've made a selection. I'm going to click on the Load Channel as Selection button there. Now they're loaded. Go back to the RGB composite channel. That's important. Always go back to that composite channel and hide the alpha channels before you go back to your layers. All right, so I'm going to increase this selection. Because right now the selection is right on the edge of the figures. So it's fairly accurate. But for Content Aware to work well, you kind of need to give yourself a bit of a margin for error. So I'm going to go to the Select menu and then go to the Modify submenu and choose Expand. And just depends on the resolution of your image. If it's a higher res image, you might need to use larger pixel numbers, smaller, like lower res, smaller numbers. I'm going to see if I can get away with about 5 pixels on this one. Yeah, so it added a bit of a buffer there. Okay, so there's a couple ways you can do this Content Aware fill. One is just to do a good old-fashioned edit fill. A shortcut for that is Shift F5. But here I can choose for the contents, instead of foreground color, background color, etc., I can choose Content Aware. And it will examine the photograph and fill in these areas as best it can on its own. Let's see how it does. Hey, that's not too bad, right? It's not perfect, but it's not bad either. I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that. Okay, now let's say you try it that way and it doesn't really work. Like it chooses something from the photograph and fills in an area, and it's just not working. It doesn't look good. It chose poorly, so to speak. Well, you've got a little bit more control now. You can go to the Edit menu and choose Content Aware Fill. What this does now, anything that's showing up as green is being considered as an area that will fill in these figures, right? Or whatever you've got selected. So if I don't want something considered to for filling in these voids, I can erase it, right? See, I can just take my brush and erase those areas that I don't want. So like for instance, like these spray cans, I don't want them filling in that void area. So anything like that, I'm going to remove. I'm also, like, I know that in my previous try, these three spray cans back here were repeating, like they were filling in. So I'm going to remove them so they won't be repeated. Okay, so there we go. So anything that you don't want, or if you think, like, you feel like, okay, well, you know, this here in the foreground, it's you know, none of this would be, you know, a good candidate. I could erase all of that, and you know, the sky is probably not something that I want to be considered. All right, so anything you don't want, just erase it. And you've got some other options over here you can explore to help kind of perfect what you're doing. I'm going to click OK. And so there you go. Now, it's not perfect. I'd probably have to get in there and do a little cleanup, but it's a lot better. In fact, I saved a snapshot of a little extra cleanup here. There we go. And I might throw an S-curve at that too. This one's better exposure, but a little bit of an S-curve, usually a good idea. Punch up some contrast and sharpness. All right, not bad. Or certainly better. All right, so one more content-aware thing. Check this out. I'm going to create a microbus, right? Here's a Volkswagen bus, full size. And I'm going to use content-aware scale on it. Now, content-aware scale is similar to content-aware fill in that you can reduce the size of an image and it intelligently adjusts the shapes that it finds there, right? It can kind of sense the bus and reduce it and keep you know, things looking fairly seamless. It's kind of hard to explain, so I'll just show you. All right, first thing that you need to know is well, let me flatten this back. So if you've got a background layer, if you go that you want to do this content-aware scale on, if you go to the Edit menu and choose Content-Aware Scale, you'll notice that it is grayed out. It's not accessible because it won't work on a background layer because it's locked, right? So if you click that lock symbol on the background layer, it'll release it and it'll be called Layer 0 now. So now we should have access to it. And there it is. Edit Content-Aware Scale. So this works a lot like the free transform tool does, except it is intelligently adjusting the contents of the image. All right, so remember, you've got to hold the Shift key down if you want to skew things, right? And you have to hold down Option or Alt on a PC if you want to do this from the center. So, but watch this. Instant microbus. Pretty cool, huh? And again, it senses the contents of the image and kind of smartly adjusts it. Now, it doesn't work 100% every time, but it's not too bad. Okay, so, but if you'll notice, down here, the wheels are not round anymore. It it wasn't smart enough to figure out that I wanted my wheels to remain round. So here's what you do about that. I'm going to hit Command Z to undo this. And I'm going to get the elliptical marquee tool and make a selection around whatever it is that I want to keep the same shape. Right? So I'm going to select those wheels, and I'm going to go to the select menu and choose Save Selection, because a selection that you save is saved as an alpha channel. See right here, it's going to make a new channel for me. And if I look in my channels now, there's alpha 2, right? I already had an alpha 1. I've done this before. So I'm going to go back to my composite channel and check this out. This time when I go to Content Aware Scale, up here on the control panel, I can choose to protect an alpha channel. So I'm going to choose alpha 2 that I just created. Now watch this. As I reduce it, the wheels stay round now. It's protecting that area. All right. There you have it. Microbus. Okay, so highlight shadow, reduce noise, content aware fill, content aware scale. You can do some really amazing stuff in Photoshop with those tools. So go give them a shot. Try it out. Have some fun. All right, I'll see you.